Hey Doodles, Virtual Mrs. Hagen here, and in this video I am going to teach you how to use modeling clay to do some ceramic sculpture techniques.
For this one, if you are following along, you are going to need some modeling clay, and you might need to work it for a little bit just to make it work for you. Right? So I'm going to be teaching you guys ceramics techniques with this. And modeling clay works a bit differently than ceramic clay. It works very similarly to polymer clay. The advantage of modeling clay is that it doesn't dry out and you can use it over again. You just have to rework it to get it to soften up a bit for you. And mine is a whole bunch of different colors because I just took a whole bunch of sticks of my modeling clay and stuck them together to get one big piece. And this is what happens when you do that. So our first technique is called a coil. And to make a coil, you've all done this before. You just take a hunk of clay and you roll it into a nice big long snake. And you keep going. I actually ended up hunking a piece of that off because that was a little bit too big. And see how I'm using the flat part of my palm? I'm doing that so I'm adding even pressure and I'm going back and forth. And I'm working the whole thing, not just one side of it. And when it becomes too big, I can actually use both hands. And I like to start on the outside and then do the middle. I know artists that do the opposite way where they work the middle and then the outside. It's just all what you are more comfortable with. I find that if I start in the middle and then do the outsides, my middle gets too skinny and then my coil falls apart. So for me, it works better to do outsides and then in. But for you, it might be the opposite way. And then you have a really cool little coil that you can use to build lots of things. Another technique is called a slab technique. And there are lots of ways to use slabs, and usually slabs are very, very big pieces of clay. I'm just going to show you a tiny one. And a slab is basically a pancake, and you guys have all done this with clay or Play-Doh before too. And it's just you take it and you kind of squish it out, and then you squish it flat. And with this particular clay, I'm actually finding it easier to just walk it with my hands and make it into a slab. Another technique is creating a ball with clay. Now, a lot of friends, when they do this, they like to do it on the table. I'm going to show you why I don't do that. Because when you roll, roll, roll like this, you don't get a ball, you get a weird little coney egg thing. Remember how we rolled with our hands for the coil? I'm going to take those same flat palms and we're going to roll it together in our palms. And what that does is it creates a softer surface. And since both surfaces are moving, it's going to round it out a bit more. And it's still a little egg-shaped because I did so much on the table beforehand, but it looks a little bit more like a circle. So our next technique, I'm actually going to come back to my slab here, is using a tool to cut shapes out of your clay. If you've made a slab, you can cut them into different things. Usually I use a popsicle stick for my tool, but right now I'm just going to use scissors. Do not use your grown-up scissors to cut clay without their permission. I am going to have to clean these after this. But you're just kind of using it to cut out whatever shapes you would like. And like I said, ordinarily I would use a popsicle stick and cut down through it, but I left my popsicle stick somewhere else today and I'm not able to do that. So, oh, that's kind of cool. Put it back in a different way. Ooh, advantages of modeling clay. See, I just learned something else. My pancake look different on the other side. So when I cut that out and I put it back in, I made kind of a cool shape. Bonus technique. And the last thing I'm going to show you, I don't know why I put that down, is molding with your hands. And that is when you just take the clay, and it has to be nice and soft for this, which is why I've been using the same clay a lot, and pushing it into the shape that you want it to be. And if you pinch it and pull, it elongates it. If you push it, it squishes it back. And what this is doing is it's just letting you shape and mold the clay into anything you want it to be. So I'm going to give it ears, just by tugging. Maybe a little nose. And if I stuck these things together, who knows what I could have. And I can even take my coil, twist it into a new shape, because coils are really cool and you can do that. And stack them together. And I have a dragon that maybe I could use for, I don't know, a roller coaster car or something. That would be pretty cool. Our final technique, I have unfortunately squished my dragon, is an engraving technique. So the really cool thing about clay, guys, is it's both additive and subtractive. Additive meaning that I can add shapes to it, and subtractive meaning that I can take shapes away. And it's one of the few sculpture materials we use that is both additive and subtractive. Paper sculpture is purely additive. You're adding shapes to shapes to shapes to shapes. You can't really take anything away. Stone sculpture is subtractive. You start with a lump and you carve out the shape from inside it. But clay, you could do both with. And one of the things that allows you to do is when you're done building whatever you're building, I'm just going to make a nice big cube here with that push and pull technique. So you can take a pencil or some other clay writing tool, and you can write and draw texture into the clay. And they even make clay tools that would allow you to scrape out portions and make little divots in your clay. And so that subtractive nature actually allows you to go in and add even more details to your picture or your sculpture. And then of course you could add stuff back in, and then you've got something rather unique going on, which is a lot of fun. How do we use these clay techniques? Well, it depends on what you're trying to make. Clay is one of those very forgiving things when you're using big shapes with it. Little fiddly shapes with ceramics clay, they do tend to break apart and need a lot of water to maintain, but modeling clay doesn't really need that. And again, it just depends on what you're making. Just like when we do something in paper sculpture, you're making building blocks that you then stick together. So like I did before, and I took and I made my little dragon, and then I stuck him together. Those bits were my building blocks. And all I had to do was push them together. And that's what's cool about modeling clay, is you just get to push them together. If you're using ceramics clay, you have to slip, score, and weld, which is that technique where we take and we scruffle a whole bunch of lines into the clay on both sides. And then we get something, our wet slip, and we stick that on because that's our clay glue. And then we weld them together. But since this is modeling clay, I don't really need to do that. I might need to do a little welding to keep something stuck. And polymer clay is going to be the same way. that you just might need to weld something to keep it stuck, but you're not going to need to use that scoring technique. Crayola air dry clay or another type of air dry clay, you will need to use that slipping and scoring technique. And if you're having trouble, just get to your grown-up and they can help you do that step. He needs eyeballs.